Imagine standing in one capital city and reaching two different countries in less time than your morning commute. That's Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. Nestled between Austria and Hungary, it's one of the few capitals in the world where crossing an international border is astonishingly easy. Vienna lies just 60 kilometers away, about an hour by bus. But here's the part that surprises most people. The route between Bratislava and Vienna once held the record for the world's shortest scheduled international flight, lasting only around 10 minutes in the air. In few places can you leave one capital and arrive in another before you've even finished your coffee. Slovakia never ceases to intrigue us with what it possesses. Snow lingers on jagged granite peaks here. This is the High Tatras, the tallest mountain range in the entire Carpathian chain, straddling the border of Slovakia and Poland. Their highest point, Górlikovski Szczyt, reaches 2,655 meters, and the range counts 29 peaks above 2,500. Along with the southern Carpathians far to the east, the High Tatras are the only part of the 1,200-kilometer Carpathian system with a true alpine character. Dense spruce and fir forest covers the lower slopes, giving way to open pasture and bare rock higher up. Sheep still graze these meadows through the summer. Streams run cold and clear through the valleys, dropping over rock faces in waterfalls fed by snowmelt from the peaks above. Scattered through those valleys are more than 100 glacial lakes, known locally as plesa, cupped in basins the ice carved out long ago. Strbske Pleso and Popradske Pleso are the most visited, their still water throwing back near-perfect reflections of the ridgeline. The deepest and largest, Vlkolíncovo Pleso, sits higher up, holding water 58 meters down. Since 1949, most of this has been protected as Tatra National Park, Slovakia's oldest, covering roughly 738 square kilometers. It's one of the last strongholds of the Tatra chamois, a species that's been isolated here since the last ice age and found nowhere else. In winter, snow buries the trails and turns towns like Strbske Pleso and Tatranska Lomnica into ski resorts, chairlifts running over slopes that are green again by summer. Come summer, the snow retreats to the highest ridges, and the mountains open back up to hikers chasing the lakes and the silence between the peaks. Before we head to the next spot, here's a fun question. What meat is often grilled or smoked and served at Slovak festivals? Comment your answer. Red rooftops spread out below Gothic spires. This is Košice, the second largest city in Slovakia, with around 240,000 people living in the Hornad River Valley. It was first documented in 1230, and by 1369 it had become the first city in Europe to receive its own coat of arms. At its center stands St. Elizabeth's Cathedral, the largest church in the country and one of the easternmost Gothic cathedrals of the Western tradition in Europe. Construction ran through the 14th, 15th, and early 16th centuries, leaving behind soaring spires and a colorful tiled roof that still dominates the skyline. In front of it stretches Hlavná ulica, a pedestrian-only square shaped like a lens, part of the largest protected old town in Slovakia. At night, the singing fountain lights up and moves in time with music, drawing people out to the square after dark. Beyond the historic core, the city spreads into wide boulevards and communist-era apartment blocks, home to most of the population. Košice sits at a crossroads of history: Hungarian, Habsburg, Czechoslovak, and now Slovak, each leaving its mark on the streets. In 2013, it was named European Capital of Culture, recognition of its museums, theaters, and creative scene. As the sun goes down, the cathedral and its neighboring towers catch the last light before the old town settles into its evening glow. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our interesting videos. Ruined stone walls crown a limestone cliff here. This is Beckov Castle, rising 50 to 60 meters above the Vá River Valley in western Slovakia. The rock itself is a geological clippy, exposed over millennia by the river running below. A stone fortress first went up here in the mid-13th century, built to guard the northern borders of the Kingdom of Hungary. By the turn of the 14th century, it belonged to Matúš Čák, a nobleman powerful enough to be called the Lord of the Vá and the Tatras. In 1388, King Sigismund gave the castle to Stibor of Stiboric, who rebuilt it as a Gothic family seat, chapel and all. Later, the Banfi family converted it into a Renaissance residence, reinforcing its defenses enough to help hold off Ottoman attacks. A fire in 1727 gutted the castle, and it was left to decay for 2 centuries. In 1970, it was declared a National Cultural Monument, and restoration work has continued since. The village of Beckov still sits at the base of the rock, its rooftops spreading out just below the ruins. Every July, a castle festival brings the site back to life, if only for a few days at a time. We worked really hard to make these videos, and of course, your support is a huge motivation. If you love us, you can scan the QR code here to buy us a cup of coffee. A castle and cathedral rise together on a hill here. This is Nitra, the oldest city in Slovakia, sitting at the foot of Zobor Mountain. The mountain climbs to about 587 meters, and the city spreads out across 7 hills below it. Nitra was first mentioned in the 9th century, when it served as the political center of the Principality of Nitra. In the year 830, the first Christian church in what is now Slovakia was built here, consecrated by Saints Cyril and Methodius. Nitra Castle still dominates the skyline, built in the 11th century on the site of an even older Slavic stronghold. Inside its walls stands St. Emiram's Cathedral, actually 3 churches layered together, an 11th century rotunda, a 14th century upper church, and a 17th century lower church. On Zobor Mountain above the city sit the remains of the oldest monastery in Slovakia, founded by Benedictine monks over 1,000 years ago. Winters here turn the rooftops white, a contrast to summers in what's considered the warmest, driest part of the country. Around the historic hill, the modern city has grown outward with housing blocks, roundabouts, and wide boulevards. Wooden chalets sit scattered across a green mountainside, tucked into the edge of Mala Fatra National Park in northwestern Slovakia. From above, the forest takes over, dense, unbroken, climbing up toward pale limestone crags breaking through the trees. This whole range is basically one massive karst formation shaped from the inside out by water and time. About 83% of the park is forest, but it's the rock that gives it away. Sharp towers of stone rise straight out of the canopy here, part of a cluster locals call Skelne Mesto, the rock town. A trail runs along the ridge, cutting between cliff edges with nothing but valley on either side. Somewhere below, Shutovsky Vodopad drops 38 meters through the trees, the highest waterfall in the range. Morning fog settles into the valleys first, burning off slowly as the sun clears the peaks. And when the mist finally lifts, what's left is ridge after ridge of green, quiet, and still mostly wild. If you've been here before, comment number 2. If not, comment number 5. Fog rolls through the valley and swallows everything except the very top of Orava Castle, floating there like it's not attached to anything solid. It is, though, bolted to a limestone rock rising about 112 meters straight up from the Orava River. People have used this outcrop since prehistoric times, but the first stone walls went up here in the 13th century, right after the Mongol invasion of 1241. The castle doesn't sit on the rock so much as follow it, 3 tiers of walls climbing the cliff in the exact shape of the stone beneath them. Lower castle first, then middle, then the upper fortress crowning the summit, each section a different century stacked on the one before it. The Thurzo family took it over in the mid-1500s and rebuilt so extensively that the castle didn't reach the form you see now until 1611. Then, in 1800, fire tore through it and burned every piece of timber inside. The walls survived, the interior didn't. From certain angles, on a clear day, the whole complex looks less like it was built and more like it grew out of the cliff face. Today it holds one of the oldest museums in Slovakia, but on a foggy morning, with the river hidden below and only the towers breaking through the mist, it still looks like it belongs to the story, not the exhibit. Water cut this place before people ever walked through it, and you can still feel that order of operations. Deep in the gorge, ladders climb straight up beside waterfalls, bolted to rock slick with moss and spray. Everything down here is damp, dark, and narrow, walls so close the light barely gets in. This is Susha Bala, one of the most famous gorges in Slovak Paradise National Park, where the trail only goes one way. There's no turning back once you start. You climb, or you don't move at all. Wooden platforms bridge the stream where the ground disappears, and hikers cross one plank at a time, hand over hand on the chains. Then the gorge lets go, and the forest opens onto Tomaszowski Výhľad, a cliff nearly 200 meters above the Hornád Valley. From up here, the tree line runs for miles, and on a clear day, the snow-capped Tatra Mountains show up on the horizon, pale and far away. Down below, the Hornád River carved the park's longest canyon over thousands of years, 11.7 kilometers of rock walls closing in on the water. Elsewhere, the Palkmanska Masha Reservoir sits flat and quiet, a stretch of still water where none of the gorge's chaos survives. Two versions of the same park, one you climb through, one you just look at. Which region are you curious about? Let us know in the comments. We'll see you there in the next video. Spiš Castle doesn't look built so much as grown out of the hill itself, walls following every curve of the rock underneath. It sits above the town of Spišské Podhradie in eastern Slovakia, on a travertine hill that's been fortified since the early 1100s. The first written mention of it dates to 1120. This place has been standing in some form for over 900 years. At more than 4 hectares, it's one of the largest castle complexes in Central Europe, big enough that entire sections still haven't been fully explored by tourists. It survived the Tatar invasion of 1241, back when it was still mostly stone against wooden siege equipment. For centuries afterward, it ran the whole Spiš region, not just a fortress, but the administrative center of the county. Then in 1780, fire tore through it, and nobody ever rebuilt what burned. The roofs went first, then everything inside them, and what's left is what you see now, walls without ceilings, towers open to the sky. Snow settles into those empty rooms every winter, the same way rain does. There's nothing left to keep either one out. Restoration work didn't begin until the 1970s, and even then, the goal was never to rebuild it, just to keep the ruins from collapsing further. In 1993, UNESCO listed it as a World Heritage Site, ruins and all. It's been a backdrop for films like Dragonheart, which makes sense. Nothing about this place looks like it belongs to one century. Bojnice Castle looks less like a fortress and more like something drawn for a storybook. Turquoise spires, pale stone walls, a moat wrapped around the base like a ribbon. It sits in the town of Bojnice, right at the foot of the Strazhov Mountains, and it's been standing here, in one form or another, since at least 1113. That's the year it first shows up in writing, in a document from Zobor Abbey. Back then it was just a wooden fort. Stone came later, built to follow the uneven shape of the travertine hill underneath it, rather than fight against it. For over 2.5 centuries, from 1643 to 1918, it belonged to the Palffy family, and one of them changed everything. Count John František Palffy spent over 20 years, from the late 1880s to 1910, turning a medieval stronghold into a fantasy modeled on the chateau of France's Loire Valley. He filled it with paintings, tapestries, and antiques he'd collected himself, and before he died, he asked, in his will, that the public be allowed inside. Fire tore through the towers in 1950, and for a while this fairy tale almost ended in ash. It didn't. The castle was rebuilt and reopened as a museum the following year. In the park outside, there's a lime tree said to be more than 700 years old, supposedly planted back when King Matthias still ruled. Somehow the whole place still looks make-believe, even though every spire on it is real. Banská Bystrica sits low in a valley, ringed on every side by the low Tatras, the Velká Fatra, and the Kremnica mountains. You can feel that enclosure from above, red rooftops packed tight against green hillsides. This was a mining town before it was anything else. Copper and silver pulled it out of the ground here starting in the Middle Ages, and by 1255 it had grown important enough to earn free royal status from King Bela IV. The real money came later, in the 15th and 16th centuries, when the Thurzo-Fugger Copper Company turned local ore into a European trading empire. That wealth built the town square you see now, Námestí SNP, lined with Gothic and Renaissance merchant houses. A clock tower from 1552 still watches over it, leaning 68 centimeters off vertical, quietly, like nobody's gotten around to fixing it in 470 years. Climb its 101 steps and the whole valley opens up below. Two spires rise nearby that belong to Francis Xavier Cathedral, built as a copy of a Jesuit church in Rome and the seat of the local diocese since 1776. This square wasn't always peaceful. In August 1944, it became the center of the Slovak national uprising against Nazi occupation, one of the largest anti-fascist revolts in Europe. Snow settles over the same streets every winter, mountains going white in the distance, and the town underneath just keeps going, the way it has for nearly 800 years. The content of this video is compiled from various sources. Please leave a comment below if you find any inaccuracies. Trenčín Castle sits on a cliff above the bend of the Váh River, and this rock has been fought over for nearly 2,000 years. Carved into the stone below the walls is a Latin inscription from 109 AD, marking a victory of the Roman Second Legion, one of the only Roman inscriptions left in this part of Europe. Centuries later, Slavs building for the Great Moravian Empire put up a stone rotunda here, and its foundations are still the oldest part of the site. The castle's real turning point came in the late 1200s, when it became the seat of Matúš Čech, a nobleman who controlled so much of western Slovakia that people called him Lord of the Váh and the Tatras. The tower that still dominates the skyline carries his name, Matúš Tower, and from the town below, it's the first thing you see. In 1335, 3 kings met inside these walls, from Poland, Hungary, and Bohemia, to sign a treaty that settled disputes across Central Europe. Below the castle, Trenčín's old town spreads out along the river, one of the 3 oldest towns in Slovakia, first recorded in writing back in 1067. Church spires and a leaning clock tower rise above the rooftops, all of it dwarfed by the fortress on the hill. Fire gutted much of the castle in 1790, and it sat in ruin for over a century until the town itself bought it back in 1905 and started putting it together again. What's standing now is the result of that century of work, a fortress that's outlasted the Romans, the Moravians, and everyone who came after. The Váh River splits in 2 at Piešťany. Between its branches sits an island that's been healing people for over 900 years. The water rises from a crack in the earth almost 2,000 meters down, arriving already hot, 67 to 69 degrees Celsius. The first written record dates to 1113, in a charter from King Koloman I. People were probably using these springs long before that. Mud gets pulled from a side channel of the river too, left to mature for months before use, Piešťany's own slow-cooked remedy. The colonnade bridge leads across to Spa Island, the longest roofed footbridge in the country. Red rooftops and gardens wait on the other side. That skyline belongs to the Thermia Palace, an Art Nouveau hotel finished in 1912 that made this spa world famous. In 1917, 3 monarchs met inside it, from Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria, plotting wartime strategy between treatments. South of town, the river widens into the Silnjeva Reservoir, built in 1959. Fog sits low over the water some mornings, blurring the line between river and town. Piešťany didn't even become an official town until 1945. The water came first, the town came after. Banská Štiavnica spreads across a valley that folds in on itself, streets rising and dropping with the terrain, rooftops in every shade of red and gray. Hills wrap around the town on every side, forest right up to the edges. From above, an old fortress-like church rises out of the rooftops, its white walls set apart from the houses around it. This is the old castle, older than almost everything near it. On a facing hill sits a second structure, pale, angular, built to keep watch over the valley below. Narrow lanes wind between tightly packed buildings, roofs overlapping like they're leaning on each other for support. Outside town, on its own hill, a red and white church with twin towers looks down over the whole valley, the Calvary, its chapels stepping down the slope beneath it. In autumn, the surrounding hills go orange and rust, framing the white towers in color. In winter, snow settles over the same hill, and the Calvary turns quiet and pale against the fog. Strecno Castle sits right on the edge of a limestone cliff, 103 meters straight down to the road and river below. The ruin looks fused to the rock, broken towers and walls following every jagged edge of the stone. The Va River curls around the base of the cliff, wide and pale green, cutting through the valley toward the village of Strecno. A highway runs alongside it, small and quiet compared to the fortress looming over it. Forested hills rise on every side, dense green rolling all the way to the horizon. Some mornings, fog fills the whole valley and swallows the river completely, leaving only the castle floating above the mist. The ruin looks almost weightless then, stone walls hanging in the clouds with nothing visible underneath. When the fog clears, the town reappears first, rooftops and streets tracing the riverbank. Sunlight catches the pale rock face, and the castle's broken outline stands sharp against the sky. From directly overhead, the whole shape of it comes into view. Walls and towers spread along the ridge like they grew there. Below, the river keeps moving, same as it has for centuries, past the cliff, the road, and everything built to watch over it. Trnava spreads out flat and wide, red rooftops packed close together under an open sky. Twin bell towers rise above the rest of the skyline, dark domes catching the light. This is one of the many churches that earned Trnava its nickname, Little Rome, for how many sacred buildings fit inside one small town. The old town walls trace a clear line around the historic center, still standing after more than 700 years. Streets fan out from them in a tight, walkable grid, church spires breaking the roofline every few blocks. Beyond the old center, the land goes flat in every direction. This is lowland Slovakia, open fields stretching toward the horizon. A factory chimney rises somewhere past the rooftops, a quiet reminder that the town grew into an industrial center too. Sunlight moves across the main square, catching the pale stone of the old buildings lining it. Up close, the bell towers show their detail, dark wood shingles, ornate window shapes, centuries of weather. Whatever direction the drone turns, the same pattern holds. Red roofs, church towers, and flat open country pressing in from every edge. Bratislava Castle sits high on a hill above the Danube, 4 white towers visible from almost anywhere in the city. The river curves wide and green beneath it, cutting the city into old and new. On the near bank, red rooftops pack tightly together. This is the old town, narrow streets and church spires dating back centuries. St. Martin's Cathedral rises above them, its tall steeple topped with a gold replica of the Hungarian crown. Downstream, a very different landmark breaks the skyline, a bridge with a single tall pylon, a flying saucer observation deck perched on top. Locals just call it the UFO Bridge. Boats line the riverbank near the old town, docked where cruise ships stop on their way along the Danube. Across the water, the city spreads out flat and modern, glass towers standing where old apartment blocks used to dominate the view. Fog sometimes rolls in low over the rooftops, blurring the line between the castle hill and the city below. Vlkolínec sits tucked into a mountain valley, wooden houses scattered across a green hillside beneath Sidorovo Hill. The village looks small against the landscape, dark roofs clustered together, fields and forest pressing in on every side. The first written record of it goes back to 1376, though people were likely living here even earlier. It's built entirely from log houses, the traditional style of this mountainous region, and it's the most complete surviving group of them anywhere in Central Europe. A wooden bell tower rises above the rooftops near the village center, built in 1770 and still the most recognizable structure here. Narrow paths wind between the houses, and a small stream runs alongside the main street through wooden gutters. Only around 45 buildings remain today, and new construction isn't allowed. Anything renovated has to keep the same traditional form. Fog drifts through the valley some mornings, settling over the forest and softening the mountain behind the village. Inside the wooden houses, handmade crafts fill the tables, woven baskets, embroidered cloth, and small knitted toys, the same kind of work families have done here for generations. Outside, a table is set simply, fresh flowers and pastries laid out under an open sky. Vlkolínec became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1993, recognized as the best preserved village of its kind in the region. Kremnica looks almost too neat to be real. Red rooftops packed tight against green hills, all of it circling one hill of its own. That hill holds the town's oldest secret, a church wrapped in walls, built to protect something worth protecting. The tower belongs to Saint Catherine, patron saint of the town, and it's the tallest thing for miles. Climb it, 127 spiral steps, and you're standing where watchmen once scanned these same slopes for danger. Twice, in fact, this town needed protecting. Double walls, the best preserved in Slovakia, ring the church below, built to guard not soldiers, but gold. Fire took the tower once, in 1560. War never did. No army ever broke through. Because underneath these quiet streets sat a mint that's still striking coins today, older than any other still running on Earth. In winter, this lake disappears. Not the water, just the idea of it, buried under snow thick enough to walk across. And people do, tiny figures cutting paths over ice that holds for almost half the year, around 155 days on average. Above them, the ski jump towers rise out of the forest, part of a resort built for exactly this kind of cold. Come spring, the ice lets go in pieces, and the mountains behind it, the highest range in the Carpathians, stay white long after the lake goes dark and clear again. Sitting at 1,346 meters, this is the highest permanently inhabited settlement in Slovakia, which is why the light here feels thinner, sharper. No river feeds this lake, and none drains it, just underground springs and whatever falls from the sky, which is part of why the water stays so still. By autumn, the larches around the shoreline turn a burnt orange, and the whole basin doubles itself in reflection. A duck crosses that mirror without breaking it. 20 meters down at its deepest point, this is only the second largest glacial lake on the Slovak side of the Tatras, and still, it's the one everyone comes to see. People have been coming since 1872, when a simple hunting lodge went up on the shore, followed a few years later by a health spa. The hotels look small against all that granite, a handful of rooftops holding on to the edge of something much older than they are. From above, this doesn't look like a mountain range. It looks like something that broke. Pale stone towers punch straight up through the green, sharp-edged, like the forest simply couldn't cover them. It's not solid rock either. These are conglomerates, layers of compressed sediment buried hundreds of meters underground before time pushed them back to the surface. Rain, ice, and wind did the rest, carving the layers apart into towers, needles, gates, and narrow stone windows. The clouds here don't just pass by, they catch on the peaks, wrapping around the spires and pooling in the valleys before burning off. This whole reserve covers just over 5 square kilometers, a small stretch of land carrying an unreasonable amount of drama. One rock formation stands 13 meters tall and is shaped like a gate. Locals call it the Gothic Gate because that's exactly what it looks like from below. The highest point, Žibrid, rises to 867 meters, watching over a landscape that looks nothing like the rest of Slovakia. Locals call this the Slovak Dolomites, and looking down at these ridgelines, it's easy to see why. Below the rock line, the valley opens into a patchwork of farmland, soft green squares stitched together at the base of something much harder. Eagle owls still nest somewhere in these crags, hidden in gaps too narrow for anything larger. Every angle reveals a different shape, a mushroom here, an owl there, stone that seems to remember being something else. This is a forest that grew around its own skeleton, and the bones are still showing. Slovakia is a destination that quietly rewards those willing to venture beyond the usual tourist routes. Its medieval castles, forested mountains, charming villages, and vibrant traditions create a journey filled with unexpected discoveries. Rather than seeking attention, Slovakia reveals its beauty through authentic experiences and timeless landscapes. Every visit offers a chance to slow down, connect with local culture, and appreciate the country's rich heritage. As your adventure comes to an end, Slovakia leaves you with the satisfying feeling of having uncovered one of Europe's best-kept treasures.